Stay off my list. Chris Pratt stars in the Amazon Prime series The Terminalist. Now he's growling, gruff, plays with guns, and sports a beard. Should you heed Pratt's warning and keep this off your list, or should you add it immediately? After his entire platoon of Navy SEALs is ambushed during a high-stakes covert mission, James Reese returns home to his family with conflicting memories of the event and questions about his culpability. However, as new evidence comes to light, Reese discovers dark forces working against him, endangering not only his life, but the lives of those he loves. So Chris Pratt is in the starring role for this as the SEAL who is dealing with some crazy memory issues after returning from a disastrous mission. Now I love how this plays into the story. Because our main character is having memory issues, he's instantly an unreliable narrator. That, combined with all the visuals that we see as Reese goes about his days and then tries to solve the mystery of what's going on with him, he has all sorts of visions. These feel real to him and look real to us, so there are several times throughout the show where I wasn't 100% sure what I was seeing could be trusted. And I like that. I appreciate the ability to really call into question what I'm witnessing within the story. This is an 8-episode dramatic action show. Now, it's not non-stop action, but when the story goes into sequences where action is called for, it's intense, chaotic, and exciting. And because Reese is a SEAL, he knows his way around weapons, so we get to see some really enjoyable fight scenes that can be both explosive and grotesque. But this also relies heavily on the drama portion to tell the story and then carry the larger emotional heft. And because each of the episodes is about an hour, the narrative has quite a lot of time to fill with characters and arcs that need to be engaging. The first episode just kind of thrusts us into the story without build-up or background. There's a very harried scene where my confusion at what all was going on helped to put me in some of the characters' places. As the disorientation matched a lot of their on-screen sentiments. Now, this series isn't afraid to be a bit shocking at times. It did some things that totally subverted my expectations. There's a scene with Reese and someone that he's fighting against. Let's just say that this dude is not going to be handling any spicy foods again. I was impressed and surprised that the story went there, but it was completely in line with the character. In addition to Pratt, there's a fairly large list of supporting characters that pop in and out of the story. There's Taylor Kish, Constance Wu, Jean Triplehorn, Jai Courtney, and Riley Keough. And I like all these actors, just not really in this. There's a general lack of emotion from all of the characters. They're overly subdued and feel like they're trying to play the characters with more melancholy than was really necessary. The villains aren't villainous or even devious or crafty. I think Constance Wu has the most dynamic range of emotion in the series, and that's just because she gets a couple of outbursts. Otherwise, everybody is just sort of there. I like the more dire tone the show takes on because it's circling around topics that are weighty and emotional. But with these, we need emotion from the characters. We need to see the passion, rage, just this devastation, shock. A good range of sentiments. And don't get me wrong, it's not like the characters are completely stoic and devoid of any type of expression. Just on the whole, they come across as bored or maybe ambivalent. Pratt does display some decent emotions at different points, but a lot of it, he's just kind of quietly grumbling. And watching the actors behave like this takes away from a lot of the passion of the storytelling, which then affects the enjoyment of watching. Now, I think it was episode 4 or 5 where the show began to find a groove that I could resonate with. Now, story elements began to click more, and I found myself becoming just a little bit more invested in the outcomes. Now, there had been some exciting moments before all that. I don't want it to come across that I was just enduring something terrible until about halfway through. But I wasn't nearly as bought into it all as I probably should have been. The overall story arc is fairly predictable, and that didn't really bother me except for the main mystery. And because I had figured it all out well in advance, the reveal was anticlimactic and not terribly impactful. I think the story is less clever than it believes it is, and really that's unfortunate because then it spends a lot of time taking us on a journey that it thinks is working. There's also a drawn-out game of cat and mouse, which adds too much time to the story. There's a point where Reese is being pursued, and given the reasons why, the chase that takes place only lasts as long as it does in an effort to try and draw out suspense. Now, there are a couple of brief moments within this sequence that does hold some tension, but not many and not for too long. Now, the cinematography within the show is one of the highlights, and most of the show has a cinematic feel to it, which I appreciate. There are also some scenes where Reese's memory issues are being heavily visualized, which the editing then does an amazing job at capturing. There are sequences that feel seamless, and they move between light and dark, overcast and rainy, to just bright and sunny. And one scene in particular is a long one, and the way it's all put together is effective in conveying Reese's emotional and mental state. So overall, the Terminal List can be exciting when the action sequences are taking place, enhanced by some great cinematography and wonderful editing. But when there isn't big action, the characters are a step above lifeless. They move through their scenes without any dynamic presence or charisma. And while the story does retain some surprising moments, the majority is predictable and obvious without any cleverness. My overall feeling and reaction to this was blah or meh. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I certainly didn't love it either. The worst part is that I invested so many hours into a show to leave me with such an ambivalent feeling. I probably wouldn't have minded so much if it had been cut down to 5 or 6 episodes, but for the whole 8 to come and go, and then me not be excited or engaged, it's just a big waste of time. There's no sex or nudity, but a ton of profanity and violence. I give the Terminal List 2 out of 5 couches. So what's an action series that you enjoy? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you've never seen Gangs of London, that is one of the wildest and most violent TV shows that I've ever experienced. I'd give it a try if you're looking for something that's new to you. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.